So in this post-truth era that we're in now, I think most news media sources that we have in the United States and probably in Brazil are biased to some extent to the left or to the right, and they also have differing degrees of truth. Some of them are very truthful and some of them are largely lies. So on the far left and the far right, you have what I call echo chambers that are not only very biased but untruthful. Towards the middle, you have organizations like AP News that are fairly truthful and fairly unbiased. In an ideal world, we'd have news sources that are accurate and unbiased, but we don't have that. Part of the reason we don't have it in the United States is most news sources are privately owned, and the owners have a particular political axe that they want to grind. That's usually why they bought the news source. We do have one source in the U.S. that is a bit of a model for a unbiased, accurate news source, and that's NPR, National Public Radio, which originally started in about 1971 and was largely funded by the federal government when it started out during the 70s and 80s. But the conservatives in the United States felt that it was a liberal news source. Currently, about 20% of the U.S. population thinks that NPR is a too liberal, and about 10% of the U.S. population believes it's too conservative. So I guess it's good that people on both sides don't like it, but more conservatives think it's too liberal, and as a result, funding has been cut. Only about 5% of NPR's funding today comes from the federal government. The rest of it comes from member stations who contribute money. Most of it comes from contributions from their listeners. And then NPR is managed by a board of directors that's elected by those member stations. So the good news is that there's a bunch of different people that control NPR, and yet people still believe that it's biased one way or the other. Another model is BBC, the British Broadcasting System, which is 100% funded by essentially a required tax. If you have a TV or radio, you have to pay it. And but again, I don't really know who manages BBC, but the question is, who's the board of directors, the editorial board that determines what's put out there. But in the United States, my feeling is that you really need to be educated. You need an educated populace that can look at biased news sources that have varying degrees of accuracy and determine truth from those. And some people would say that's impossible, but I don't believe it is impossible. I believe if you listen to Fox News on one side, which is clearly right-leaning, and you listen to maybe NPR or CNN on the left side, which is clearly liberal, you listen to Reuters and AP News, which are near the center, and from those, you hopefully get the truth, but maybe not the whole truth from Fox on the right. You get the truth, but maybe not the whole truth from CNN on the left. And when you combine those with some fairly unbiased sources like AP News, you can discern truth. The problem is for uneducated voters that are unable to do that, they become very easy to manipulate by either politicians in the United States, or as we see now in the United States, our intelligence sources and now even the administration agree that the Russians have been able to bias our news sources in ways that uneducated people have been unable to pick up on, and they've been successful in influencing our elections by doing that. And when we have people, the people at the most powerful bully pulpit in the world saying that the mainstream media is fake news in the United States, our alternatives are to go typically to left and right wing echo chambers, which are not only biased, but are actually tell lies. So my recommendation is get educated, and we should work on better, more accurate, less biased news sources like BBC and NPR, in my opinion.